Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys checking out today's video and spending some time with me because we're going to be talking about spring jig fishing. Going to give you guys a very detailed little tutorial, sort of a seminar on how to catch bass on jigs in the springtime of the year, which is my favorite time of year to fish them. And the thing about fishing jigs in the spring, guys, is there's 3 seasons within the spring that comprise the spring season. You got the pre-spawn period, you got the spawn period, and the post-spawn period. In each one of these situations, there's applications for jigs, sometimes more than others, so we're gonna get into that in today's video. And I think once you master a few of these tips, you guys are gonna really see some quality fishing because, in my opinion, a jig and a spinnerbait are the 2 best lures in the springtime of the year to catch really big bass on, so we'll get into that in today's video. Also, guys, just a couple quick reminders. Want to let you guys know about the sale going on my Solar Bat Series RB2 and RB3 sunglasses. Right now, you can get them at 30% off. I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description. Try these high contrast yellow lenses, man. These are really good under low light conditions. And also, guys, anybody interested in becoming a channel member here of Intuitive Angling, as a member, you get videos that are private, that are not seen by the public every week, some access to my personal email address for your fishing questions. So just go to my homepage, hit the join button in there. Also, I'll put the link in the description for the memberships, and you guys check that out. Much appreciated there. Okay, guys, I love jig fishing, man. I want to talk, I'm going to give you guys some really good juice. It's taken me forever to learn on jigs here. I think you guys are really going to help it out. But first of all, in the springtime of the year, this is the time of year I like to fish a full-size jig. There's 2 different types, or actually there's several different types of jigs, football head jigs, whatever. But there's, you got your pitching and flipping jigs, you finesse jigs, football head jigs, that type of swim jigs. But in the springtime of the year, I like a full-size jig. And we're going to be talking today, guys, about my Blaukat throwback jig from Cumberland Pro Lures. I'll link these in the description of the video, guys, my Tackle Warehouse link if you guys would like to pick some up. These are jigs I helped design with Cumberland Pro Lures, and the thing that makes them unique is they're living rubber skirts. And guys, living rubber skirts are very hard to find because they're very labor intensive. Material's not easy to get, but you have to hand tie them with wire or twine. And they just look a lot more realistic in the water, guys. The lifelike action of live rubber, far superior to silicone. So if you guys are serious about jig fishing, try the living rubber jigs here. And also, guys, we got a nice little 4-aught mustad hook, really cool keeper. It's got the turned eye on it that comes through the cover really good. And these heads on them are powder coated that won't chip. So it's just, you guys will love this jig, man. Link in the description there. So what I want to do today is I've got 3 different jig setups I want to talk about here. There are my 3 favorite jig combinations as far as trailers and colors in the springtime of the year. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the areas you want to fish them in and just some overall tips there. So first of all, let's talk about the jigs and the conditions that these specific jigs work in. Then we're going to talk about areas. Now, I've got 3 different jigs laid out here that I use in the springtime of the year based upon the conditions I'm fishing. The conditions primarily are going to be the water clarity and to some extent the water temperature a little bit, but the water clarity is a real prime driver on this. So I'm going to go over all 3 of these. So the first one let's talk about is probably one of my favorite for the springtime. You guys hear me talking about it, and that's a brown and orange model. This is the brown and orange Blaukat throwback jig, living rubber here. And usually I'll pair it up with some type of a green pumpkin trailer. I've got all Zoom super chunks on the trailers today, but most of the time I'll either use a super chunk or I'll use, like a big salty chunk. I'm not a fan of the curly leg trailers, guys, on jigs as much as a lot of people. I seems like I catch more fish on the, just the straight chunk type trailers. Here's the scissors here. I'm going to trim that back a little bit. But brown and orange is going to be a really good combination, especially if you got the water's a little bit cleaner. So if you got water visibility, say over about maybe 2.5 foot, I really like the brown and orange. And another time I like the brown and orange is during the pre-spawn period when that water temperature is a little bit cooler. It seems like they really react to the brown and orange really good during the pre-spawn. But mainly, this is the jig that I use in February, March a lot. Brown and orange, you can't beat that. Okay, the next one is just the all-around standard you can't beat, is the black and blue. Now, the black and blue, I pair it with a solid blue chunk. This is a the Zoom Super Chunk in the flipping blue. And the blue is a very versatile color because the black and blue will work in dirty water. It works in a little bit cleaner water. It'll work in any in-between water. You simply can't go wrong with black and blue. One of the things about black and blue that you'll find is it works really good on aggressive fish. So if these fish have not had a lot of fishing pressure or they haven't seen a lot of jigs, black and blues are a really good color for that. It's also a really good cover when you're pitching and flipping it around heavier cover. So the brown and orange is a good color for like fishing around rock. Like in the pre-spawn, I'll concentrate more on rock. But later in the spring time of the year, like, you know, during the spawn and after the spawn, if those fish are in like flooded bushes or, you know, a little bit thicker cover, like lay down trees, black and blues are a really good color for that. But black and blue has been a staple forever. You just can't go wrong with it. And then finally, my third favorite spring jig is a black and chartreuse with a solid black chunk on it. This is the black super chunk again, black and chartreuse, Blaukat throwback jig. This is my dirty watercolor. So anytime that I'm fishing water visibilities that are, say, under, probably under, 12 or 13 inches of visibility, a foot or less, I'm using black and chartreuse. Black and chartreuse, one of the things you'll find about it, guys, is it catches the biggest fish. There's something about the aggressiveness of the chartreuse that the big fish will really react to it. Black and chartreuse may not be the best color to catch a lot of fish on, but it catches quality fish on. And actually my first Bassmaster tournament I ever won was on a black and chartreuse jig. Really good color if you can get them to hit it. So off-colored water and also low light conditions. I remember how I got started fishing a black and chartreuse jig. I'll tell you a little story about it. I like to give you guys a backstory on some of this stuff. There used to be a tournament organization here in Missouri in my area where I fish called the Great Plains Pro Bass Association. And it was some of the first draw tournaments I ever fished back in the early 80s. And they had this magazine in there. And back then, jigs were a big deal. That was back when we didn't have as many lures as we do now. And I got reading an article from one of the guys that was one of the top anglers on the circuit back then from Iowa. And he was saying about how he likes black and chartreuse, excuse me, anytime it's raining or cloudy, he'll go with black and chartreuse. And guys, he was right on. If you have a rainy day, a black and chartreuse is hard to beat, or any type of a low light, heavy overcast day. But primarily it's my off-colored dirty watercolor. So that's my three different colors. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you want to look for in terms of the type of areas you want to fish in. The springtime of the year, as far as the part of spring that you're fishing, excuse me, guys, the part of spring that you're fishing has a lot to do with the areas that you want to fish. Because again, when you're talking about spring, you have to divide it up into 3 seasons within that spring. The pre-spawn, which is pretty much that period when the water temperature is, say, below 57 degrees. Anytime that water temperature is like between the 40s up until like 57 degrees, that's the pre-spawn period. And then you've got the spawn period, which is usually when that water temperature upper 50s to mid 60s. And then the post-spawn period is usually when that water temperature is knocking on 70 degrees. And each one of those windows, as far as within the spring, the bass relate different to jigs as far as how you want to fish them and the areas and the color. So right off the bat, let's talk a little bit about the pre-spawn when the water temperature is in the 50s. This is my favorite time situation to fish a jig in. When the water temperature is like 50 to 57 degrees and it's March, it's pre-spawn, the fish are not on the beds yet, this is a great time to fish jigs. It's probably the best time to fish a jig when you have those situations. And again, that's when I use the brown and orange. Sometimes brown and orange if the water's like, maybe 2 to 4 foot visibility, and solid brown if it's over 4 feet visibility. And again, like we talked about, it's all about fishing rock. And you want to fish that jig during the pre-spawn on these places where bass are staging, getting ready to spawn. So therefore, rocky banks, bluffs, rock transition areas, riprap, any type of larger rock is going to be your best jig type fishing area during the pre-spawn. Now, I don't catch too many fish during the pre-spawn on wood. Now I will a little bit if the water is high in the bushes, say it's flooded in the bushes and you have water temperatures in the 50s, that can work pretty good. But primarily I'm looking for just bare rock banks to fish it on. And I just methodically work down those areas. I just take, most of the time I'm fishing all these jigs that I'm talking about on a flipping stick, 20 to 25 pound test Seaguar and Vizex line, regardless of the water clarity. Flipping stick, big line, because these are big jigs I'm talking about. My throwback jigs are full-size jigs. So I just methodically work down those rocky banks. I'll pitch to the bank, work the jig out from say 2 to maybe 10 foot of water, pitch it to the bank, maybe 3 or 4 foot, past my last pitch, and just slowly pick my way down a rocky bank. And those fish, they like that rock that time of year because they feed on crawdads. I mean, most of the time during the pre-spawn, when those fish are on rocky banks, they're rooting around for crawdads that they really like to eat during the pre-spawn because of the protein that crawdads have. It really helps build up their egg sacs. So that's a really appealing pattern and technique for those bigger female bass. Now, the period of right around the spawn and the pre-spawn and the post-spawn is a little bit different. During this time, you're going to find that the bass, they tend to bite a soft plastic lure better than a jig during the actual spawn and the post-spawn. Now, they'll still bite a jig, but here's the deal. It's like in the pre-spawn, they want a jig probably better than anything. Once that water temperature hits like 60 degrees, and when it's from about 60 to 70 degrees, for whatever reason, the mood and the personality of that bass flips a little bit, and you usually do better pitching and flipping a soft plastic bait like a lizard or creature bait or Texas rig worm. It just seems like they want that soft plastic a little bit more subdued, smaller profile better during the spawn and the post-spawn. However, the exception to that rule is during the spawn and the post-spawn is when the water's high, which is common in the springtime of the year. April and May, it's very common to have high water. If you have high water conditions when those fish are actually spawning and after they get done spawning, that's when the jig will work better than the soft plastic. I don't hardly catch anything during the spawn and the post-spawn fishing a jig on those type of places I did in the pre-spawn. In the post-spawn and the spawn, about the only time that I do fish a jig is around flooded cover. Flooded bushes, flooded willow trees, flooded trees of any type, maybe some submergent grass, flooded like cattails or reeds or lily pads, any type of, flooded type cover in shallow water. For some reason, those bass really, really like that jig a little bit better. And that's when I use the black and blue and the black and chartreuse a little bit more. You get some spring rains that come in there, it muddies the water up, the water gets off colored, and that's when those black and chartreuse and the black and blue jigs will outproduce the brown and orange a lot of times. So mainly, guys, it's just one of the things about jig fishing. It's like a jig is going to catch fish all the time. There's some times when there are other lures that are going to be more productive, but here's what separates people that are good jig fishermen and catch a lot of bass on jigs versus the people that don't, is they stay with it. Because let's say, for example, you and I are fishing and it's the first week of May and we're fishing our favorite lake, and we're fishing whatever shallow cover the lake has, and you got a Texas rig creature bait or you got a Texas rig worm on, and you're getting a lot of bites, and I'm fishing this jig and I'm not getting near the bites, but when I do get a bite, it's usually bigger than the fish that you're catching on the soft plastic. That is the mentality shift that you have to have when you're jig fishing, is that you're probably not going to get as many bites as you will on a soft plastic lure, but the quality of the fish is going to be better. Now, that's not to say you can't catch a lot of fish on a jig, because I have had days where I've caught 60, 70 bass on a jig. The best jig fishing scenario for me, aside from the pre-spawn pitching it to the rocks, is fishing a jig in flooded cover in the post-spawn. This is a super fun way to catch it, because it's like when you have about 2 to 3 foot of water in flooded cover and you've got water temperatures of about 70 degrees and you still have a large population of fish that are in that shallow water that are done spawning, they're garden fry, they're staying shallow to feed up. It can be some of the funnest fishing that you'll ever have. That's also a good time of year to fish a swim jig, but if I can catch them pitching and flipping, I'm going to be pitching and flipping with it. So anyway, guys, that's just a few thoughts about jig fishing. Like any other lure category out there, every single month's different. One of the things that you'll find about jig fishing is that the colors change throughout the season. There's certain colors that are better at different times of the year, and you just sort of have to learn to mix and match your trailers and your jig colors to create that look that matches the water clarity and the light intensity. And one other thing, guys, one final thing here, about the jig size. In the pre-spawn, I have found that the bass prefer a little bit lighter jig. So my favorite jig size is a 3/8 ounce during the pre-spawn. And then during the post-spawn, after those fish are getting done spawning, it seems like they react better to a heavier jig. So I'll go to like a 1/2 ounce model, like in May after those fish are done spawning. So anyway, guys, I'll put my throwback jig link in the description of the video here from Tackle Warehouse. I just encourage you guys to get those 3 colors: black chartreuse, black and blue, brown and orange. Get you cut some 3/8 and 1/2 ounce. Put you some 20-25 pound line on with your flipping stick and go have at it. So hope it helps out. We'll see you guys.